All right, we are live here, folks. Hope you're having a good Friday evening on this Canada Day long weekend. Hope you're doing well. Today, there's news. It seems like a Friday sort of news dump. Don't want people talking about it, but there's a lot of drama going on within Canadian politics right now, specifically within the Canadian Liberal Party, with actual Liberal MPs calling for the Prime Minister's resignation. We're going to be talking about that today. Who's calling for it? How likely it is to actually go through? As well as some other interesting things that have gone on and actually what led up to this. Good to see you all here. If you're in the chat, let me know if you're here live. I see Heavy T in here and Snow Bunny, nice, and Jay Mar. Good to see you guys. And if you're tuning in on the recording, thanks for tuning in. I'm going to be chilling here. We're going to take a look at exactly what has gone on here, what led up to it. You might want to pour yourself a drink for this one. That's what I'm doing on this Friday night, coming to you live at 10 p.m. Eastern. Nice way to sort of finish off the week here. Good to see you folks joining me today. Have you heard about this? Hey, yeah, I'm seeing more people in here. It's Shane, Heavy, JC, Lisa. Good to see you guys. Yeah, so have you heard about what's going on here? Let me give you a little bit of a recap. Did you hear on Monday, this past Monday, I believe it was the by-election for a riding in Toronto, one that has been held by the Liberal government for about 30 years, right? Trudeau sort of ousted this woman who was the MP in this riding from his cabinet, like the small group of ministers that actually are sort of part of the inner circle of the prime minister. He kind of kicked her out from it. So as a result, she said, hey, you know what? I'm going to give up my seat here. And as a result, there's a by-election. The people in that riding have to vote for who they want the MP to be. And even though it's been a Liberal riding for 30 plus years, we saw it flip to the Conservatives winning that riding. Nobody expected this. Nobody expected this. It's a pretty big deal, right? Because you traditionally see these urban center ridings, the Torontos, the Vancouvers, and whatnot, going Liberal. Certainly Toronto. That's what I know best. That's the area that I'm in. So when you see a seat like that flip, well, then you start to think, when the election comes up in 25, what's going to happen here is there going to be a whole wave of this. If the Liberals are losing so much momentum here in the cities, will it also translate out into the suburbs, which are traditionally conservative, so it could be an even worse situation out there. So that's what happened. We saw this flip, and throughout this week, it seems that things have been percolating, and now we're seeing Liberal members of Parliament calling for Trudeau's resignation. There's been rumblings about this for a while, right? People saying, okay, we don't know what direction the party should go in. Is it the right time? Trudeau has over and over and over again said, hey, you know what? I'm staying on. It's important to me to stay on because I need to protect all the good work that we've done for Canadians. This is what he's been saying. But now, this man right here, this is Wayne Long. Let me actually pull up my annotation thing here so I can draw on the page for you a little bit. So I can draw on the page for you. Wayne Long, this man here, penned a letter over the past couple of days to be sent out to all of the Liberal members of Parliament. Word on the street is that he was writing this letter for the past couple of days and was holding it back, not sending it out, and sort of circulating it amongst a group of Liberal MPs, saying, hey, will you also put your name on this? Will you also put your name on this? It will have more sway if there's more people with their names on it. It seems like it lost a little bit of momentum in those efforts leading up to today, when just about 4 or 5 hours ago he said, hey, you know what, screw it, I'm just going to send this out to all the Liberal MPs. And let's get into the contents of what are inside of this letter, because you don't see often members of Parliament breaking rank and file from their party, right? Is this a sign that, hey, heading into this long weekend, there might be some introspection here, or perhaps not? We'll talk about that and what you think specifically. So I think that this is going to be wild. Yeah, some people saying snap election. I don't know if we're going to see that unless the NDP sort of make a change here. We're going to pause BB And so this was Wayne Long, who has become the first member of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's caucus to call for his resignation. This guy is from New Brunswick, and he penned an email letter to all the Liberals saying that after this week's disastrous election loss in this riding that we were just talking about, it's time for Trudeau to step down. And another MP from also an Atlantic province from Newfoundland has said, you know what, you're making a good point here. He says, after seeing how badly this election went in Toronto, I want you to know clearly and directly where I stand. For the future of our party and for the good of our country, we need new leadership and a new direction. This is coming from Long, who is not running for re-election. He said that the Liberals need to listen to what voters are saying. So is it that, okay, I'm not running for re-election, I don't need to worry about being punished for saying something like this? It's just the reason that he's coming out. We're going to talk about another member of Parliament who has said something similar, who also is no longer running. Why is it that it's only the MPs that are no longer going to be in the government that are coming out and saying this? Or is it a matter of them being the ones that are have nothing to lose, right, by coming out and saying these things? I wonder what you think. I see Sandra in the chat saying, not a big fan of Long. Connor Ferguson says that the party is desperately trying to save themselves. It won't help. And Horror A says, I emailed my MP 2.5 years ago asking for a caucus vote of confidence. Crickets. Then I won't vote for him now, regardless of how he stands today. Maybe this is Wayne Long as well. Interesting stuff. It says the voters have spoken loud and clear. They want change. And then the Newfoundland MP said, well said, in the same sort of email thread. We've seen Trudeau say again and again, not going to step down. I need to be able to protect all the hard work that we've done. I need to be able to protect things. So this is pretty wild to see. Is this the first of many politicians that come out, Liberal politicians saying, hey, maybe we need to look in a different direction here? Or is there some sort of a control that the government and Trudeau's inner circle have over this situation where they're going to be able to weather the storm and remain calm? Now, interestingly, it seems that Trudeau is considering making a big change as a result here, right? We've had Trudeau sort of hand in hand, tied very, very closely with his deputy prime minister and finance minister, that's Chrystia Freeland. But word on the street is that there might be another person who could be coming in for this role. And Shane, hey, good to see you, buddy. Shane's saying, it's hard to say if this really means anything. By-elections have a really low turnout, and this one had very little coverage until the day of. I wouldn't have known about it if I didn't get a voter card. Yeah, fair enough. It could be a matter of not a large sample size, and then that skewing it in any direction. I would say that even if there is a lower turnout, I think that they would have been surprised that it was even close, let alone that it went the other way, right? Even if it is a smaller sample size for the sort of difference there. But yeah, there are rumors here that Trudeau could be turning on Chrystia Freeland as a result of all of this. We have here, and this is as reported by the CBC. Let's pull this up. Power of Politics, David Cochrane sort of saying, hey, oh, you can't see this yet. Let's flip over here. He's saying, okay, word on the street is it might be Mark Carney. That exactly, Lisa B saying in the chat, sort of getting ahead of me. It could be Mark Carney who's going to take over this finance position spot. I'm curious. Let me know in the chat as we watch this. Would changing Trudeau's inner cabinet, the people around him, the people that probably are doing a lot of the decision making and on policy stuff, do you think that just changing them will be enough? But let's listen to what David Cochrane says.
On a start, that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has spoken twice to Mark Carney about joining cabinet as finance minister, which is a detail that I'm sure may be a shock to Chrystia Freeland. Nigan, what do you make of this kaleidoscope of Liberal revelations today?
Well, it's certainly lots to write about on a Friday, especially considering the events in the United States last night and the idea that we can still compete with that, even though, the thing that's going on in the States, I don't want to talk about that. But the reality is that there's when cabinet disunity reaches the public, it becomes a major issue that goes back to the days of Martin Chrétien, that then festers. And as we know, Parliament's no longer sitting, so we're on kind of the barbecue circuit, and so therefore people are starting to talk more and starting to open up into larger issues, and people are quite nervous following the events of the by-election. I don't actually believe that Trudeau is going to leave until I start to hear that the inner circle of Trudeau is the ones talking to the media. And while we do have reports of overhearing ministers talking perhaps about their worries about Trudeau's leadership, it's not until I hear, let's say, Mark Miller talking to the media, or let's say,
Right.
Chrystia Freeland talking to the media. I mean, politicians are defined really by their inner circle, and their inner circle in this, Trudeau's inner circle in this case, is not talking just yet. And while Catherine McKenna is an important voice within the Liberal Party, I don't think it's Catherine McKenna that will be the tipping point. I think it will be a much more bigger inner circle. I see Trudeau, he's got...
Yeah, so all this to say, we've got the two members from Atlantic Canada saying, hey, maybe it's time that Trudeau steps down. We might need a replacement here for the leadership of the party. One of those MPs being somebody that's not actually going to be running again in the next election. And then also Catherine McKenna, another Liberal member of Parliament, saying the same. We also saw a former BC Premier, I believe. I forget her name. Colleen Campbell. Is that sounds wrong? Former BC politician, and also calling for the same sort of thing. But the key point here is saying, hey, word on the street is Trudeau's been reaching out to Mark Carney to come in. Can you come in and save the day? Can you come in and save and right this ship? Although I think that the damage might have been done at this point. The damage might have been done, and will a new voice actually make voters think, hey, maybe there's a different avenue here, and maybe I will vote Liberal even though I was thinking of voting Conservative. Like, I don't really buy that there's a lot of people that haven't already made up their mind at this point about which way they would go. It's either you're maybe fed up with Trudeau and are going to vote for a lesser evil in the Conservative Party, I think, in a lot of people's minds. Or you're somebody who says, okay, Poilievre, he is just a hawk, just dog whistles, isn't going to make any change, and maybe you believe that a lot of things that the Liberal Party says about him, that, okay, this is a guy who doesn't support all of these policies, all the climate policy, social issues that have been brought up lately these days. It seems like maybe you've made up your mind, and Mark Carney might not make the biggest difference here. But we actually have another Liberal MP coming out and saying the same sort of thing, bringing up the Carney name. Is this something that's actually going to happen? Again, oddly, coming from a politician who's not seeking re-election. It seems to be only the people who aren't seeking re-election that are coming out. You say turn up my voice a little bit. Yeah, let me crank up the volume. I could be a little loud. I had it to a level where I was just like holding the mic at my mouth, but I'm typing too much and clicking around. But listen to this. This is from another Liberal MP.
He has earned the right to right the ship. Of course, if you care about the country and its direction, and you're worried as I am about a Poilievre government, there isn't necessarily unlimited time to right the ship. The Prime Minister has articulated the need to protect our progress as he answers questions about running again, and he and his team should now articulate why he is the best person to protect it. And that isn't to say he isn't. I've said before in answer to media questions, it's hard to take your ace out in the 7th inning if he still thinks he's got gas in the tank. And to belabor that metaphor, let me add that the decision ultimately depends upon who is in the bullpen warming up. Would Carney perform better in 2025? My local crossing guard seems to think so, but Carney's got a lot to learn about campaigning, and it's not yet clear to me, at least, what his version of a progressive direction for this country means. What does he mean by inclusive growth? There are some smart and charismatic people in the current cabinet too, for sure, but who knows? It seems to me there is one way to answer the question, and that's to put it to the Liberal membership. Forget the anonymous Liberal MP quotes in the media, of which I will never be one. Let's have members, activists, organizers, and grassroots donors across this country decide. That's what I would do if I was the Prime Minister. Rally the troops. Tell us why you want it and what comes next. Put it to the members. And sure, the media set the by-election up as a referendum on Trudeau. Makes for good headlines, sells papers. But let's remind Canadians that the next election will be about a choice of leaders, of governments, and of the kind of country we want.
So interesting stuff. He says, oh, okay, sure, maybe Trudeau isn't the right person for the job, but then who is? But then who is? This is the question that I think that a lot of people are thinking about, because I don't think it can be Freeland. I don't think it could be Freeland. I think that there's too much of a wrapping up of the two, Trudeau and Freeland, and the very same criticisms that you might have of Trudeau would probably be levied against Freeland. Like, I'm sitting here as a Canadian citizen, I think like you all should be, and thinking, okay, no matter what political party I personally support, I want the Liberals to be as successful as possible. Now, hold on. You might think that that's wild to say if you're somebody who's conservative leaning, but even as a conservative, or if you support the NDP or Green, you want every single political party to compete as much as possible, because competition results in the best outcomes for Canadians, right? People have to step up their policy game. People have to, if you have all parties as strong as possible, you get the best result as the end consumer of this stuff, right? As a citizen of Canada. So I'm sitting here thinking, like, is there anybody that might make me more likely to vote for the Liberals? And I have a hard time thinking of people that I don't already closely associate with maybe the negative criticisms that if I were a conservative supporter, would have of this government, right? Trudeau and Freeland, their policies, you see them as very the same. The one person I've said who I think might make a suitable replacement for Trudeau is Sean Fraser. Sean Fraser, I think that he talks in a very refreshing way to hear from a Liberal government, some in a way that it's not infantilizing. Every time I hear Freeland and Trudeau, it seems like they're talking at a 6th grade reading level, a 5th grade reading level. Do you know what I mean? Like, it feels like, hey, I've got to talk in this way because Canadians are dumb and they're only going to understand basic things. Like, you can't talk to Canadian citizens like they're an adult. Fraser talks to Canadian citizens like they're adult, which is refreshing and would make me slightly more likely to vote for the Liberals if he were leader. At the same time, you look at the files that he's had over the past years, notably the Minister of Immigration, right? He was a cabinet minister in the immigration role, largely during the period when we saw such issues with international student numbers ballooning, and the way that the government, in terms of the tax revenue they collect and the GDP numbers they show, as well as big businesses have taken advantage of these international students and now are acting like it's not their fault and they didn't actually gain from it, when really businesses were selling jobs to immigrants to get them to have work permits. So if you watch my previous video, you know what I'm talking about. Labor market impact analysis jobs, where businesses would charge the people who were applying for those jobs to work there. It could be $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 to get a job at a Canadian company that would extend your work permit. This is stuff that's really benefited big business and has benefited the government while hurting everybody, Canadian citizens who have been here a long time, as well as these international students and non-permanent residents. It's hurt everybody except for the elite, which is the frustrating thing. Fraser kind of oversaw a lot of that. Albeit, I'll say, I don't think that Fraser has had a lot of policy control or messaging control about what he's been able to do. So, other thoughts are Anita Anand, I guess, would be someone to consider, and Melanie Joly probably would be, in some people's eyes, the next up. But I'm not sure what to think of all of this. I'm not sure what to think of all of it. I'll take a couple thoughts from the chat here before we move on, because there's another part of this. There's another part of this that we haven't talked about yet. Something that I'm not really sure what to make of, and I'm hoping you can help me figure out exactly what to think of all of this. Something with a Liberal defense minister, Harjit Sajjan, and some stuff that happened a couple of years ago that seems a little bit sketchy, and he's denied it over and over again. We're going to talk about that in a minute. A couple thoughts from the chat here. Let me pull this up on the screen so you guys can see what I'm seeing here. Couple questions from the chat. Fraser is the guy who let in 9,000 international students in a single year, exacerbating the rental housing crisis. Fraser deserves jail. He has caused so much pain, says Jasmine. Yeah, this is the thing, right? Because you attribute the immigration policies to the guy who's in that seat, and I don't blame you. DJ Colorzone says, "Don't worry, Canada, your money is safe in Ukraine from now on." Interesting stuff there on the Russia-Ukraine war. Seems that Zelensky's asking for a peace agreement now. A major flip here. We've seen a couple weird things go on in politics. Maybe we'll get to this later in the stream here with calls for Trudeau to resign. Seems like a replacement possibly coming there after the U.S. debate. It seems like some people saying maybe there needs to be a replacement for the Democratic nominee who's going to actually lead the party into the election, as well as at the same time Julian Assange getting freed. Okay, that's interesting. And at the same time, Zelensky asking for peace. Like, it seems like all of this odd stuff is all happening within the same couple of days. Molly says, "Can anyone see my comments? I'm always censored." Yeah, this is an odd thing. I don't do any kind of policy stuff on the chat. I don't know if YouTube removes anything, but I'm definitely not deleting any comments here. Yeah, who was it that miscounted 1 million people again? It could be Sean Fraser. Melanie Jolie is a joke. Yeah. So this is the wild stuff that's going on. Let's go on to, because all of this liberal government drama is kind of breaking along the same time as this Harjit Sajjan story. Have you heard about this? This is reported from the Global News, and I'm gonna need to take another little drink from that. I'm having a little bit of whiskey in a cup that I actually made. Isn't that kind of cool? Went to a glass blowing thing and made like a whiskey cup out of like one of those really hot kilns, I think they're called. Need a little bit of Canadian-made whiskey at the end of the night. At least I do. Yeah, so this whole situation with Harjit Sajjan, Globe and Mail was the one that reported this. The headline being, let me read this, Sajjan instructed special forces to rescue Afghan Sikhs during the fall of Kabul. So you'll remember a little while ago, back in 2021, the U.S. left Afghanistan. They were there for a very long time. They left Afghanistan, and as a result, all the other countries that were in there had to pull out and had to sort of evacuate other people that were there as well. This led to the Canadian government trying to evacuate as many Canadians as possible. The Globe and Mail, however, reports that the then Defense Minister, Sajjan, gave instructions to Canada's military saying, hey, you actually should divert resources from rescuing Canadians to rescue a group of about 225 Afghan Sikhs from Afghanistan after the Taliban took the country back over. Now, this is a big deal. This is a defense minister saying, allegedly, as per Globe and Mail reporting, instructing the Canadian Armed Forces who were there, the Canadian officials that were there, to take up resources that could have been saving Canadian interpreters, Canadian other people who had helped the Canadian military. Instead, go save these other people because you've been instructed by another activist group inside of Canada. Let's get into the details here, because I guarantee you I'm not doing it justice. I guarantee you I'm not doing it justice, because I'm just like there's so much going on. It's hard to keep track of all of the details here. I'm just trying to figure things out, and hopefully you can help me figure out what to think about all of this. Is this blown out of proportion? I don't know. They say, then Defense Minister Sajjan told the special forces to rescue about 225 Afghan Sikhs. let's zoom in here so you can see. In an operation that 3 military sources say took resources away from getting Canadian citizens and Afghans linked to Canada on final evacuation flights out of Kabul. This is what I'm saying. Diverted resources. And this is coming from 3 anonymous sources to the Globe and Mail. So make of that what you will. He gave the location information about them to the military and tried to get them to meet up with the group. And this was passed to him from a Canadian Sikh group that was in contact with these people in Afghanistan. Is this a big deal? Does this do you care about this when you hear this? The sources say that these Sikhs were not considered an operational priority for the Canadian military because they had no link to Canada. Sajjan, his intervention impacted the rescue of Canadians and other Afghans on Canada's priority list. But the Globe isn't going to identify who is actually coming out and saying this. So again, make of that what you will. Make of that what you will. Now, of course, Sajjan is going to come back and dispute this, right? Let me see if I can, right here. We were trying to rescue as many people as possible. The Afghan Sikhs were just one group that we were asked to do. We were getting waves of requests of all different vulnerable groups. So he's saying I was just sort of giving people this information. It wasn't a command, right? It wasn't a command to rescue these people. Don't rescue these people. Right? This is what he's saying. But the reporters at the Globe and Mail at least have these 3 sources that are saying, well, actually, it was more like a command, and we had to divert resources away from saving Canadians out of that situation. Canadians that may have gotten stuck there in a Taliban-controlled country, right? Obviously, I don't know all of the history and all of the inner workings of these the non-government organization that provided the information to Sajjan to give to the Canadian Armed Forces. I don't know how all of that works, but it does smell a little bit fishy to me. It smells a little bit fishy to me. Sajjan, sort of defending himself, says that there was a strict protocol to first evacuate Canadian and Afghan military interpreters, but Canada had to respond to waves of other requests, including the Afghan women's soccer team. There were also pleas from the Sikh communities who were actually under direct threat, he said. All of these requests were taken very seriously. The 3 anonymous sources say that it was a different situation than Sajjan was saying. They said that he was out of line asking Canadian Special Forces to rescue these Afghan Sikhs. The operation involved intense planning, and it meant that fewer soldiers were available to screen people awaiting the last flights out of Kabul. Is this manufactured outrage? Is this a hit on a Liberal member of Parliament? Are these uncredible sources that are coming forward and saying, like, let's make the Liberals look even worse here and say that they left Canadians to die and to be stranded in a foreign country? This is what the interpretation is. Is this a hit against the Liberal Party? Or maybe these military sources have no other way to get out something that could be true, and they go to the media talking about this stuff, right? This is what I wonder. Obviously, Sajjan not happy with the situation. Let me pull up the clip. Let me see if it's here in the top clips. It's what we've been talking about. Yeah, okay. So here's his response to this whole matter. Some say it's the playing of the race card. But also, keep in mind, this could be someone who, we don't know who these 3 sources are. They could be military members, or they could not be. Of course, if the Globe and Mail's reporting it, you kind of got to give it a little bit of credibility. But listen to this.
You said you directed the military to help a group of Afghan Sikhs during the Afghanistan evacuation in 2021. What's the difference from directing and ordering the military to do this?
Okay, let me address the Globe article quite directly, because I'll be honest with you, it was utter BS. Those who were following the evacuation missions and then events of previously to that know quite well that there was an approved government policy to safely evacuate as many vulnerable Afghans as possible, which included obviously Canadians first, those who worked with us, like our interpreters. And it also included vulnerable Afghans, which included religious minorities like the Afghan Sikhs and Hindus. And I can assure you, all effort was done to carry this out and do it in as safe as possible manner, and to get as many people out as possible as well. And I also want to just mention the fact, to read that story and to take some of these questions, given that it was a approved government policy that we were executing. I'll be honest with you, I didn't think I would be getting those questions if I wasn't wearing a turban. And those who actually know me quite well, that throughout my careers and my service, I've rarely ever even talked about racism and what it actually meant. But I'll be honest with you, it needs to be called out. And the reason being, just last night, my daughter was not even aware of this articles to come out. And she, on her own, was talking about the visceral hatred, and she's 15 years old, by the way, visceral hatred that you see online, and the kind of messaging that's being pumped out there on social media. And I had to, console her, saying, you know what, it was better before. It's better now than it was before. It doesn't make it easier for her to see this. And I couldn't tell her at that time, by the way, there's another article that's going to be coming out that is going to kind of justify the type of questions she's even asking now. And I know that she's not alone in this.
Sorry, but what's the difference from directing and ordering the military to do this? I also have a follow-up question.
Sorry.
What is
the follow-up question?
No, what is the difference between ordering?
What I can do is I can happily have my press secretary provide you a very thorough statement on this regard.
And the follow-up question is it appropriate for a defense minister to direct the military like this? Is that political interference?
I'll give you the statement, but on this, the military is under civilian command, under Minister of National Defense, and the job of the Minister of National Defense to execute the government policies of the day.
Okay, so this is his rebuttal saying, I didn't do anything wrong, and frankly, you wouldn't be asking me this if I wasn't wearing a turban. This is what he's saying. Of course, racism is real in Canada. Absolutely. Anyone who denies that, of course you see it. Of course there's awful people out there that will discriminate people based on their race, based on their sexual orientation, based on any of their personal choices that don't matter and don't impact other people, right? I'm a very live and let live type person. As long as what you're doing doesn't harm anybody else, whether that's your race, your sexuality, any of that stuff, go for it, as long as you're not hurting or impacting other people. Of course, that stuff exists in Canada, but is this what's happening here, or is it a convenient way that you can wiggle out of a politically sensitive situation, right? We see this with Chinese interference, right? Any calls for a foreign agent registry is anti-Asian discrimination, anti-Asian hate, right? It's targeting the Asian diaspora. This is what has been said for years, 3 years ago, right? And now we're seeing, with all of these different commissions that have come through, the Cullen Commission and the Hogue Commission now, that, hey, actually, there was some foreign state interference that was going on here, and perhaps this has impacted other members of Parliament, and other members of Parliament might be willingly going along with this, and might be able to use Canada's desire to not be seen as racist or to not be seen as discriminatory, using that against them, right? Against average Canadians, saying, if you question any kind of foreign policy, then that means that you are a racist, right? I don't buy that. I buy that that's a great way to dodge, but I do not buy that any criticism of foreign policy or any criticism of international interference, that this stuff can't be talked about, right? Yeah, NPC I'm not says the only racism I experienced being born here is from woke people trying not to be racist. I can see that. Damn, can't watch this. Yeah, so it's frustrating stuff for sure. And it kind of ties to a similar topic, right? Where it seems like there's other countries' fights happening within Canada. Do you know what I'm talking about here? Do you know what I'm talking about here? Of course, we talked a lot about foreign interference on the China front, right? And how, well, we know how much money laundering goes on in the West Coast and also in Canada. The refining of drug money into Canadian banks. We've seen all this. We've talked about this in the Chinese interference case that's been going on. How there's members of parliament who have been willingly going along with this, right? Have been willfully blind of what's been going on. We've talked about this over and over again. People who maybe are going along with it for political gain, or perhaps are going along with it because there's some negative consequence if they were to not. Some negative consequence if they were to go the other direction. Right? We talked about this sort of blackmail. You can check out the video on the channel. Canada's blackmail problem just got worse. In how these foreign nations can work to gather negative evidence about politicians and hold that over their head so that they don't go against that party's interests, right? I'll leave it at that. You can investigate that for yourself. We've talked about that, but what about the other kinds of battles that are going on here in Canada, right? If you remember to just about maybe it was a year ago. I think it was like a year and a half ago. We had the Indian activist who was killed on Canadian soil, who Trudeau said the Indian government were the people responsible for taking out this Canadian citizen. Right? Some of the details that weren't included as heavily in mainstream media was that this individual was an activist, a part of the Khalistani movement, right? The group of Sikh people that want a independent state in the north of India, right? There was a lot of bloodshed over decades and decades in northern India around this issue. The current Indian government under Modi, who I think just got elected for another term, says that these people are terrorists, they're a national security threat to India, and they're not tolerated in India. This is what Modi says. Of course, that could be a government that's overstepping and is trampling on people who have a legitimate right to land. I don't know. I'm some idiot on the internet. But that's the other angle, right? But we see this going on in Canada, and this is what a lot of the issues have been between India and Canada. And I don't mean to connect this specifically to Sajjan, because I don't know about any of, if there is any connection to this, but it seems like there's a lot of external issues to Canada being brought into Canada. Like, why is there, like, I don't know if I'm pro or anti Khalistan's separatism from India. I have no idea. How am I supposed to keep track of that as a Canadian citizen, the history of India and who deserves what land? But it is odd to me that there's a group of people that are organizing in Canada actively looking for a state in the north of India. Like, I don't understand how Canada is now the place where this separatist movement is. Whether you support it or not, it seems weird that it's in Canada. Let's get into this a little bit. And this is India coming out against Canada because of some things that have gone on. The Indian government who is very much so against the separatist movement. It says the Ministry of External Affairs has strongly protested against the raising of Khalistan separatist slogans at public events attended by the Prime Minister. And the Ministry of External Affairs summoned the Canadian Deputy High Commissioner to convey India's deep concern and strong protest over the incident. They say this illustrates once again the political space that has been given in Canada to separatism, extremism, and violence. Their continued expressions not only impact India-Canada relations, but also encourage a climate of violence and criminality in Canada to the detriment of its own citizens. This is coming from the Indian government, right? They go on to say that we're summoning the High Commissioner from Canada to come to India to talk to them about the raising of this separatist slogans on Khalistan at an event which was being personally addressed by the Prime Minister of Canada. They're very concerned that the protest was conveyed at such disturbing actions being allowed to continue unchecked at the event. So, in short, Government of India doesn't like that the Government of Canada allows for this activist group. The group calls themselves activists. The Indian government calls them terrorists, right? This is the two different framings. I have no clue. You tell me what I should think about this stuff. I don't know how the hell I'm supposed to figure out what to think about this. The only thing that seems weird to me as a Canadian citizen is, why is this stuff becoming an issue in Canada? Why is this a fight that's going on between Canada and India with different groups that are going against another foreign government inside of Canada? But they're not Canadian groups, right? They're not groups of that seem to be representative of the mass of Canada going against a foreign government. Like, I could see that. That's not what this seems like it is. Now, we give all this like another frame, right? Okay, am I crazy for thinking, okay, maybe there's some interference going on here too? We look at the NSICOP report, the one that came out that we were talking about largely with the Chinese interference, saying, okay, there are three governments that most heavily today are interfering with Canada, as per the NSICOP report, which is a bipartisan, I guess bipartisan is not right, a multi-party committee that's coming up with the reports. NSICOP says there's three countries. They don't get specific to specific governments of a country, but three countries that most heavily interfere in Canada, and they say the three are China, India, and Iran. The three countries that interfere most in Canada. Obviously, this report is very heavily redacted, so we don't know the specifics. But because we don't know the specifics, as Canadians, are we supposed to just say, well, we don't know, so we can't think about this kind of stuff because we don't know the specifics? Or is it reasonable to get so skeptical like I'm getting and saying, okay, well, like, is there interference that's allowing this kind of activism or organizations against a foreign government to percolate in Canada? Is that a bad thing? Is that a good thing? I don't know, but maybe the reason that we don't either talk about it as much in Canada in the political spectrum, politicians are never talking publicly about this stuff, is that the result of some sort of interference? Is that maybe it's probably not just China? Well, the report says it's not just China, it's India, it's Iran, to a lesser extent it's Russia, right, interfering. It's hard to know what to believe, and it's hard not to feel like we're in a post-truth world, right? It's hard not to feel like we're in a post-truth world where there's so much information like this, it gets overwhelming, and you don't know what to make of it. That's how I feel. And I feel like I keep a pretty good finger on the pulse of this kind of stuff, and I have no clue what's going on. I have no clue what I'm talking about. Exactly, Snow Bunny. It's so hard to find the actual truth. And I think that we're post-truth. I don't have any faith that I can find the actual truth. I can talk about this stuff from my perspective, but I'm reading this from various news articles, and I don't know who owns these news organizations. I haven't seen this stuff with my own eyes. It's wild. Under the radar, thank you for the super chat saying, a stolen valor. Sajjan faces calls to resign in wake of Afghanistan battle, claim 2017 CBC. He has lied before. Let me look at this. Yeah, thanks for the super chat. Since you super chatted here, what I will do is I will look up this article and bring it up. Again, thanks for the support under the radar for the super chat. Let me pull this up. Yeah, okay, this is a CBC article. I remember a little bit of controversy here, albeit this was before I was covering this stuff as heavily. So it seems like Sajjan's faced a little bit of criticism of Afghanistan battle claim. Trudeau says Sajjan has his full confidence despite the exaggeration of his role in battling the Taliban. Okay, so he exaggerated his claim that he was the architect of a major assault on the Taliban in 2006. The conservative leader said that Sajjan was sort of just taking credit for the actions of another and said that he should be fired. What he did was wrong, so will the Prime Minister remove the Minister of Defense? Trudeau says no, he made a mistake, he apologized and took responsibility for it. When we make a mistake, Canadians expect us to apologize and to acknowledge that mistake. That's what we did, and that's why the Minister of Defense continues to have my full confidence. Okay, so there's already been a little bit of controversy here. Let's see what this clip is.
No one will ever take away from the Minister of Defense's actual service record, but people in the military have a name for what he did. It's called stolen valor. When someone takes credit for the brave actions of another, and what he did was wrong. And now he has lost the confidence of our men and women in uniform, and they need to have confidence in their leaders, especially when they're putting their lives on the line. So will the Prime Minister remove the Minister of Defense?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, when we make a mistake, Canadians expect us to apologize and to acknowledge that mistake. That's exactly what we did, and that's why the Minister of Defence continues to have my full confidence.
Okay. Interesting stuff. Again, thank you for the super chat under the radar. So there's been controversy here before. Now, what does this have to do?
So, Katie,
okay.
Let's talk first.
Hello, autoplay. Hello, autoplay. So what does this have to do with the title of this live stream? Of course, we started off talking about the Trudeau resignation calls coming from within the party. It seems odd to me that this headline-taking thing comes out on a Friday after this big Globe and Mail report that's saying, okay, maybe there was some improper actions by the Defense Minister of Canada instructing the military to forego saving Canadian citizens and Canadian priorities, think people linked to Canada, and instead save a group of 225 other people, Afghani 6. It seems like a big story. Sajjan says it's not. Now nobody's going to really talk about this. Let's be honest. It's a complex situation. No one's going to talk about it again, especially when there's internal strife in the Liberal. Like the fact that I named this live stream Trudeau resignation drama, what did I name it? Liberals' internal battle, says to me that, okay, well, clearly that is the most interesting headline, right? So people are going to talk about that more than they're talking about the interference. Already, people have stopped talking about the Chinese interference situation. And we saw the RCMP. Oh, this is something, I haven't seen this. But I read a headline about an RCMP, like somebody way high up at the RCMP saying, hey, if the stuff about interference came out and was unredacted, it would reap permanent serious damage on Canada if Canadian citizens found out what was actually going on here. Did you see that? Does anyone have the link for that? Let me see if I can find it here. RCMP interference clip. Let me see if I can find it. Because, yeah, I think I took a screenshot of exactly what the tweet was. Because I'm going to pull that up. because I haven't seen that yet, but an RCMP person saying, hey, if you actually saw the shit that was in here, we'd be having a bigger issue here. We'd be having a bigger issue. Let me see. Screenshots. This is what I do. I read Twitter and then I find the clips that I want. Okay, yeah, here it is. Here it is. I've got it. Let's check this out, because is this as big a deal as it sounds like it is? RCMP commissioner says. It looks like it was on Rosemary Barton Live. Let me see if I can find Rosemary Barton Live on YouTube, because this interference thing is just like blowing my mind. But maybe it's like, what are we really going to do about it? Is the way that I've started to think about it. It's like there's so much corruption. It's like they've kind of already won. So is the best route to be upset about it with no avail, or just to accept it and learn Mandarin? is that the answer? Rosemary Barton Live.
Here's a simulation.
Okay. We're going to find this. Okay, if not, we'll just find the clip. Because this is wild, right? Like we just stopped talking about this stuff because we're never going to know. It's national security reasons. We can't know. Because it would tear our country apart. But that's pretty messed up, no? That seems pretty fucked to me. Like we can't know what's going on, because if we did, we'd lose all faith in Canada. And we're just never gonna know. It's like you gotta laugh at this stuff, move on, and accept like everything's messed up. Like this is what I always say. Like I talk about this stuff and I get frustrated about this stuff. But ultimately at the end of the day, you can't blame this stuff for things in your own personal life, right? This is the thing that I worry about sometimes when people watch the videos, is that you get so frustrated about what's going on and the truth of the matter, right? Which is what we're trying to get down to here. And you start to say, if things just changed, then my life wouldn't be so shitty. Then I would be able to do what I want to do. You can do what you want to do right now is what the message I would put out, because any thought that you think that things are going to change from the kind of bullshit that we talk about is a little naive, right? Regardless of what politicians in power in the future, it seems like we're already pretty far down this road. We're already way down this road. That ship has sailed. You can only focus on what you can do for your own life, right? This is at least how I think. Maybe this is a selfish way to think, that I'm not being valorant and being like, we can take this country back and we can have control over it, and we can feel as citizens like we're proud again. Like, I don't know if I actually believe that, and maybe that makes me a bad person. But the way that I think about it is, okay, here's the way that things work. We know this to be true. What can I do to set me and my family up for as best a future as I can? Because ultimately, that's who I care about most. The people like my close friends, my close family. What can I do to, given everything's bullshit, given that is true, what can I do within that bullshit to make things as good as I can? That's why I'm always trying, and I'm upfront with you guys here. I'm constantly trying to increase my income as much as I possibly can, save as much of that income as I can, and invest it in assets and try to build wealth for myself and my family, so that regardless of what happens, you can take care of them. And I think you should be doing the same thing. Maybe that makes me selfish asshole, but this is the way that I think about it. And I think that most people should think about this too. Okay, where is this clip? I'm scrolling here. Let me show you. Okay. Aha. It's a 1.5-minute clip here. This is Rosemary Barton live. And this is allegedly it is the RCMP commissioner saying that if we were to inform Canadians on which members of parliament have been compromised, that it could cause significant damage to the country in its entirety. With the amount of evidence available, it's fair to assume, and this is opinion now, from the Twitter account, it's fair to assume that the RCMP is working to protect government instead of doing their jobs by exposing traitors. I don't know if the RCMP's mandate is to expose traitors. I don't know. I don't know that the RCMP themselves aren't compromised in similar ways to these politicians. But let's listen to this clip. This is new to me as well.
The fact that there are currently people who are demanding the government release the names of parliamentarians cited in that unredacted version of the NSICOP report, how do you feel about the prospect of that happening?
Well, I'll let the government decide how they see best to do this, but I am concerned if we're starting to disclose secret or top secret information. Again, it puts in peril, it could put in peril tradecraft, partnership, especially international partnership. I'm one that I appreciate the fact that parliamentary privilege is something, and I just know about 5% of parliamentary privilege. But I think we have to be mindful how that information is shared. I don't brief the Minister of Public Safety on every single that we have, because I think there's a need to know and then a right to know, right? And there comes a threshold that, yes, I'll bring the minister in and brief him on the file, but I don't brief him on every single file. And I think we just have to approach this very cautiously.
What is your understanding then if someone, if an MP got up inside the House of Commons under parliamentary privilege and decided to reveal this information? What's your understanding of what your role would be as Commissioner of the RCMP? You couldn't do anything, or you could do something?
Well, I'm inclined to say that would be a challenge for us. If it was out in the public domain, it'd be different because you're disclosing top secret information or secret information. Let's hope we don't have to cross that that road.
Okay, I get how, this is from this Twitter account, government.exe is corrupt. That's a little bit, he doesn't really say what it makes it sound like he's saying. Could cause significant damage to the country. The context that he's saying is to the country's allies and security intelligence partnerships, right? The Five Eyes allies, that's Canada, Britain, Australia, US, and is it New Zealand too? Our security and intelligence allies, saying that if we were to go out and say and share all of this mission critical information, then that would damage our relationships. This tweet kind of makes it sound like Canadians would never have faith in their institutions again. But honestly, I think they probably wouldn't. I think they probably wouldn't have faith if we actually found out anything. Do we really have faith at this point? Is what I wonder. Do we really have faith in our government at this point, that they aren't entirely compromised? Right? That there isn't international governments, other countries interfering to the level that, hey, even federal political leaders are beholden to some people, right? And it makes me feel like I'm a crazy conspiracy theorist person. It makes me feel like I'm losing my mind when I say international countries own our politicians. It makes me feel like I'm insane. Because just a few years ago, I would have said, this is some bullshit person who's just kind of losing it. Which maybe I am. I don't know that I'm not. Maybe I've just become the person that I would have called out. But man, it makes me feel like I'm insane when nobody talks about any of this stuff that seems to me like it's actually going on. Yeah, Jody says, nope, it's going on, right? But like, how do I know that we're not the crazy people? All 400 of us hanging out here talking about this stuff. Like, are we QAnon conspiracy people because we're questioning this kind of stuff? Like, I don't know. I don't think so. I think we're getting a clearer picture of how the world actually works. Millhouse says we live in a bubble of retardation. Let's take that clip. What is that clip? Let me bring that up. One government for the people. Yeah.
Other people
let's listen to
enjoy the celebration.
This is the guy who's like the person from.
It's more than just being on the range longer than anyone.
He's like the head of some.
It's about practicing smarter.
What is it called? Like a cult leader guy. But this clip just cracks me up every time.
Because democracy basically means.
But we gotta get the closed captions off.
Government by the people, of the people, for the people. But the people are retarded.
And truer words have never been spoken, folks. And maybe we're just falling into that same category, getting so riled up about this stuff. But like I said, and I want to emphasize this because like maybe it doesn't come across on a lot of the videos that I post. Like I care about this stuff. I want to follow it, and I'm doing my best here to sort of explain my understanding of these things. I definitely have more of the expertise in the financial and the monetary policy and that side of stuff. But as I've gone down these rabbit holes covering this kind of stuff, this is just how I'm seeing things based off of the media that I'm consuming, and I'm just talking about it with you. There's a chance I don't know what I'm talking about, but this is what I'm talking about. But with all that said, you can't just let yourself get into a pit of thinking about this stuff 24/7. This stuff is real. It's going on in the world, but you gotta take care of your own house, right? You gotta take care of the people in it. Work to put yourself in the best, most stable financial position that you can, and just like a family position, right? A good relationships with good people. This is what's most important, and that's what you got to focus on, because unless you have bigger aspirations than I do, we're not going to change this stuff. And if you think a change in political leadership is going to do it, I'm sorry, it's not. I'm sorry, Pierre Poilievre isn't going to be the martyr for all of the country's sins. Right? And of course, this is why he's not very strong on this international policy stuff. Because if there is the level of interference that we believe that there is in the country, then why would you ever, as a politician, stand up against that and have the might of all these other countries making it harder for you to win an election? Right? Yeah, fair, Jason. Jason Hubin says you need to know what's going on in order to set yourself up and your family for success. That's true. That's true. You gotta pay attention enough to know what the rules are of the game that you're playing. Yeah. This is what I think about this stuff. This is what I think about this stuff. And I appreciate you following me down the rabbit hole of insanity. If you like more of this stuff, and I think that all of you who are here watching right now probably will, check out the link I think it's the link in the first link in the description of this video. I've started very slowly sort of just doing 45 to an hour long rants, kind of podcast style, talking about this stuff from my perspective. It gets a little unhinged. even more so than this. Check that out because I'm putting stuff out there every once in a while. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Again, this is maybe what I'm going to say more and more. Follow me down the rabbit hole into insanity. Maybe we're in a bubble. Maybe we're by the people for the people, but we're the people, and we are acting in a certain way. But we'll do it together at least, and maybe there's a little bit of solace in that. But thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. I'm going to call it right now. Going to catch up on who the Toronto Maple Leafs drafted, because I was watching that before this, and then they traded back the draft pick, and now we have like the 31st pick and like the 58th pick. I was like, I'm not going to wait. I'm not going to listen to Gary Bettman talk for even long. This is the NHL draft that I was watching. Big hockey guy here. Going to find out who the Leafs picked. Going to figure out, draft is dragging. Yeah, DJ Colorzone's got that open in the other tab. Jason says, you're only a little way into the hole, Russell. Just be warned. Yeah, maybe this will be a long and dramatic slide into peak insanity, but at least we'll be doing it together. I appreciate you all tuning in. Hopefully we get to do this again sometime soon, and I'll catch you next time. Have a great Canada Day weekend. Be proud of the good things in your life. There's a lot of frustrating bullshit, but there's also a lot of good out there, and focusing on the good stuff makes more of it happen in your life. That's the way that I look at it. The more you focus on things, the more you notice them, and if that's positive stuff, it's positive stuff. If it's negative stuff, it's negative stuff, and be grateful for the people that you have around you and the people that you love, and celebrate that on Canada Day, that we're able to live in a place where you're able to spend time with the people that you love. But I'll catch you all later. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.